Hey, how's it going guys? It's your boy, and guess what? It's Islam time! Yes, it's been a while since I covered Islam, but I feel like I owe it to you guys to cover this barbaric religion because it's beginning to encroach, and this video is quite, well, let's just say, it's quite a doozy. Basically, it's them trying to explain away Islamic punishment, saying, it's not that bad. But anyway, I'm not going to speak for them. Let's just let this woman speak to us about how Islamic punishment ain't all that bad.
Hi everyone, this is FAQ on Q4T. Today's question asks, is Islamic punishment barbaric?
And of course, stereotypes. We just can't seem to get away from them. But of course, she's wearing a hijab for a reason and trying to normalise that shit. And well, the question is, are they barbaric? Well, to us, sane people who come from the West, yes, it is barbaric. When they're chopping off limbs for stealing, when they're punishing people for adultery, and lashing people as well, let's not forget that. Yeah, we don't do that over here in the West. We just send you to jail, and in some places where the death penalty is still around, we only kill people for the most egregious of crimes, like murder or something else like that, but we don't really do what Islam does. So to the Western eye it is barbaric, but of course to the Muslims living there, hell no, this is just standard practice for the last 1500 years, I guess.
Have you ever wondered why some people in the world do bad things?
All the time, love, all the time. But sometimes it's not worth thinking about because I've got other things to think about. But I guess this is you trying to beg the question, right?
Why are there some who cheat and steal rather than earn money themselves? Why are there people who murder? With what right do they take away the rights of others? And most importantly, what should we do to protect ourselves from people like that?
Well, it's simple. First, you teach the public self-defense, or at the very least, you teach them how to be responsible in situations where they may be more likely to suffer from the hands of criminals. Now, what makes these criminals do it? Well, it's a combination of many different things. Some people are desperate, so they steal in order to feed themselves or to pay the bills. Some people are just horrible and will con people to get money out of them. Others, they may lack a parental figure in their lives, usually fathers, and the gang gives them that parental guidance that they otherwise would have missed had they not been in there, but that's besides the point. Others are complete utter sociopaths or psychopaths and do it because they can. That's really the only reason why, but again, it's too nuanced to really get into, and you know that. But you're trying to play on people's emotions here, and you're trying to say, well, what makes you think all this? Look at these philosophical questions. Maybe the Islamic punishment is befitting of these people. Well, I'm sorry, but when it comes to playing on emotions, that does not mean that your case is correct.
This is why every country has its own justice system. This system dictates what is to happen to people that go against the laws and regulations of that country.
That does not mean that every justice system is fair or just and is in any way equal, because they're not.
Now, every country has their own way of deciding what is legal, what isn't, and what lies in between. But what is there to ensure that we don't punish criminals too harshly or too lightly?
It's called being objective. Now, unlucky for us in the West, when it comes to women, we aren't so objective. That's just the truth of the matter. And to a lesser extent, ethnic minorities. But again, you know, that's nowhere near as big as a gender divide. And I'm not saying that the Western justice system is perfect. I'm just saying that it is probably the better one because we have tried to find a balance between jail time and rehabilitation. And in many countries, like Scandinavian countries, I say that they have found a pretty good system, although because of their biases, they're letting the migrants get off lightly than they would, say, Swedish or Norwegian or Danish citizens. But again, that's people choosing not to be objective. But as with Islamic law, no, not really. I don't think it has in any way met that balance. In many ways, the punishments for crimes like stealing and for adultery and for other such crimes are far too harsh. You shouldn't have your hand chopped off just because you steal something for whatever reason, nor should you be lashed for cheating on your partner. Why is that a crime? Yes, it's a moral failure on the part of the person, but why is that a crime? Unless, of course, that person maybe raped somebody while they're in a relationship with another person, or maybe they knowingly transmitted a sexual disease onto their partner or another person. Maybe then they could be, in many ways, criminalised. But again, the justice system in Islamic countries is far too strict and not based on fairness and just means of punishing people.
What is legal in one country might be near treason in another. So how can we agree on a universal punishing method?
Relativist nonsense. There is a tried and tested way when it comes to punishing people. Justice has to be blind. You must be objective. You must look at the evidence that is presented towards you and then act upon that evidence. If there's enough evidence to convict a person, you send them to jail. Now, in many countries there are varying degrees of different types of crime, and even within those crimes there are varying degrees of severity. Like, for example, Lavinia Woodward, I know I've been using her a lot. Her case of wounding was a type 2, which is in the middle and quite severe enough to warrant jail time. Of course, she didn't get it because the judge did not act objectively and acted in a biased manner. But nonetheless, the idea of justice within the Western world, and of course in other Eastern countries like Japan and South Korea, we see that justice being blind and using objective reasoning and using the evidence in order to judge whether somebody is committing a crime or not is a tried and tested way. It works. And let's not forget also that you must also have a jury. Even centuries ago in Europe, people knew of the importance for a person to be judged by their peers.
This is why Islam has some rules on punishment that apply universally. They pose as an alternative system of punishment that is built on religion. But isn't Islamic punishment barbaric and dated?
Well, yeah. Again, it's based on religion. So anything that goes against your particular religion can be punished. Be that criticism, be that running away from said religion or turning its back on religion, or not even kowtowing to that religion, i.e. paying the taxes if you're a Christian or a Jew. I forgot what the word was, but you can tell me that in the comments. This is the problem. Our justice system is not based on religion. You are not an alternative punishment system. It's nothing more than a leftover from the medieval era, or the Dark Ages. You've got to go further back than that.
Haven't we now gotten a much more developed and civilized form of punishment for criminals?
Well, yeah, we do. Look at the legal systems in Scandinavia when they work properly. Look at the legal system in America and Britain when it works properly. Well, just look at any Western justice system when they work properly and by the book. Yes, they are far more civilized and they do work.
Well, in reality, Islam is very particular who can be punished and to what degree. Let's have a look at the punishment for theft. Islamic law states that theft, for example, should be punished by the amputation of the thief's hand. That's violent, you may say.
Yes, but what is your excuse for this? How do you wriggle your way out of this into making it not sound barbaric?
Well, before you judge, let's have a closer look at the conditions concerning this punishment. Actually, there are 17 conditions that apply in Islamic law. If and only if all conditions are met, then corporeal punishment can be initiated. Most of these conditions are quite straightforward, such as the thief must be an adult and that he must be sane.
It's kind of interesting because during my research for this, I couldn't find 17, but instead I found over 80 of them. And this is in the Wikipedia page, so take it or leave it, but it's based on hudud, that's what she's saying. And there's 83 conditions that could be met to deem whether or not an act of theft should then be carried out with the punishment of amputation. It's not just 17. And yes, being adult and sane is one of them. Now, I don't know if this list is in order of what should be deemed punishable by amputation, but being sane was rather all the way down the list in like 50 something. This, it does not necessarily mean that it's not barbaric. This just means, like every other legal system, you have conditions. We have conditions, as I mentioned before with Lavinia Woodward. But again, yours still ends up with whether or not a person loses a hand or not.
However, there are other conditions that are very particular. These calculate every single societal trouble that the person might be experiencing and that is causing that person to steal. For example, if the thief is being forced to steal, is facing famine, or if the thief goes and repents to the judge and promises not to steal anymore before the theft can be proven, then the person is saved from punishment.
Okay, fair enough, he doesn't get his hand amputated, but what is he punished for then? He's not going to get away with this, is he, the person who commits this crime? He's going to get lashed? Is he going to be sent to prison? Because at the very least, in our justice system, he will probably get a lenient sentence and probably would be out in a matter of weeks or even months. What you will do is you will probably lash him and then you will send him to jail. For how long? I don't know. I'm willing to admit that. But again, not very civilised if you're going to lash him. And again, you failed to mention what is going to happen to this person. Again, trying to make it out that it's not all that bad. Almost as if he just gets away with it and will promise never to do it again. I'm sorry, but how do you know he's not going to do it again? And how do you know that during a famine that this is going to be upheld by the system? Especially when during times of crisis like that, order is very hard to keep.
Also, the stolen good must be above 1/4 of a gold dirham, which equals roughly $150. If the worth is lower than that, then the thief does not face corporeal punishment. So, as you can see, it's very hard to fulfill all of these conditions.
How many of these independent states actually abide by this law? Considering we know that they do cherry pick laws out of the Quran. And again, this is based on our currency. And again, your currency translates differently into American currency. And again, there's nothing stopping a person from losing their hand because, as I mentioned before, there's more than 17 reasons. Oh God. Again, I don't buy this because again, there's by which Islamic country are you basing this law on, or even are you basing it on the Quran itself? Where exactly are you basing this from? Are you basing this purely from the Quran, or are you basing it on another country's system of law? I'm just really interested.
Hence, amputating the hand or several fingers is actually an extremely rare punishment in Islam.
If it's so rare, why does it happen? And why is it still on the books if people rarely do it? Are you trying to scare people so that they don't commit crime? Or is it that you are so ideologically entrenched that you have to do this because your religion says so? I'm just wondering, and does that not make you not very good Muslims if you're not going to go around doing what Allah wants you to do?
But why make such a punishment when it hardly ever takes place? The answer is equally simple as it is genius. It's put into place to scare people off of thieving in the first place.
Oh, so that makes it okay. That doesn't make it barbaric, even though it does actually happen. People do lose their fingers and their hands. And bear in mind, you lose your hand on your first offence if it matches her requirements, by the way. You lose it on the first go, not your second, not your third. You lose it on your first go. Now yes, it is meant to be a deterrent, she's right, but it still happens. People are still committing these crimes, so it's not actually working. And yes, she may say, well, people still steal in your countries. And I'll say this, yes, it does work, but it doesn't happen that much. Crime is actually decreasing in our countries.
Still not convinced?
Well, no, because there's no need for such a deterrent to stop people from stealing, because most people are not that desperate in society and most people are not that horrible enough to do so, at least in the West. And the thing is, you still have that punishment. You still base it on antiquated ideas. So that is barbaric. You've only proven to people that it is still barbaric.
Let's remind ourselves that according to the World Health Organization, in Islamic countries where certain crimes, such as theft, are punished through amputation or public flogging, these crimes are effectively reduced and eliminated.
Communist countries claimed to have no theft in their countries either. And do you know why they claimed that theft didn't happen? First, because they just brainwashed the population into thinking that it never happened, but it actually did. And two, you were punished, like in Islam, very harshly for any crime, because in dictatorships and theocracies and anything like that, you have to be in order to keep the state's control intact. Considering the fact that these crimes are still happening, people are still getting punished for this, it still happens. It's not been eliminated. And so what if the World Health Organization says that? So what if you have low crime rates? That doesn't mean that it is not barbaric. We don't have those punishments, and we still have crime rapidly declining in our country.
This, however, can certainly not be said about non-Islamic countries.
If you look at British statistics for this year, for example, theft is actually decreasing. And in fact, in the US, crime has decreased to such an extent that it's now back to comparable levels in the 1960s, whereas in between those years, it actually increased. So, again, you're talking a lot of bollocks. You're actually lying there, love.
What do you think? Share your thoughts with Q4T.
Well, I've already said what I needed to say, and I'll summarise it as such. You still have these punishments. These punishments are barbaric. Yes, they're meant to be deterrent, and they don't always happen very often, but they still happen. And then you lie about the West apparently having an issue with theft when all crime is actually decreasing. You're trying to make out that the Islamic system is not barbaric, even though it is, and trying to make out that it's a better justice system, neglecting the fact that Sharia law isn't very fair, isn't very just, and that your punishment system, of course, would make people think twice because of how bloody severe it is. That's the end of the video, guys. It's all the bullshit. It's just cultural relativism, and she's trying to justify Sharia law. What can I say? It's just typical Islamic stuff, trying to push acceptance of their ways onto us. We should fight back against this, but anyway, until next time, I'll see you all later.